Would you believe this is an easy puzzle to solve? It is, and I'll tell you why you should solve it, along with two other classic Sudokus released this month. Greetings, friend. I'll give you setter and solver perspectives for three classic Sudokus I think you will love. Stick around to the end. I'll even give you some hints to solve each of these puzzles. Also, you can click on the links below if you want to try them yourself. And with that, it's reviewing time. Our first puzzle is Classic Sudoku 7360 by Florian Wortmann. 7360 means that's the designation in the CTC Discord server. Florian doesn't normally name his classic Sudokus, even though I did one called Switzerland. I'll put a link to that one at the end. Very fun solve. I think you'll enjoy it. Didn't really come up with a name for this puzzle. The inspiration was that what Florian was trying to do is he was working with this idea of how can I get 4 empty 3x3 grids into a puzzle and with the least amount of givens. And so he came up with this puzzle which has 4 completely empty grids and only 21 givens. So that's pretty impressive. May not be the record for the least amount, but it's impressive. And then you put on top of that, it's a gas. It's generally approachable Sudoku. That's why I have it as kind of my easy puzzle recommendation. I made a comment before on one of Yoshi's puzzles about how setters are trying to find a way to put 2 or 3 of these empty grids in a row, and so Florian kind of ran with that comment to create this particular puzzle. Took him about 2 hours to set. Didn't really have much help from others as far as testing goes, other than the regular testers in the server. And he really gets inspired and does classic Sudokus because he likes to go in with the idea of what is possible and can I also make it a gas. And so in this one, you're supposed to look at the screen and go, is it really possible to solve this? And is it really easy? And the answer is yes. Believe it or not, it is. Okay, from my solver's perspective, I thought the grid itself looked pretty awkward starting wise. However, what you'll notice is that you were kind of forced to look right here to begin your solving. The reason being is you have these 4 filled in grids, you have this block all by itself, so you're not going to get much from that. But this one has 2 other peeking in, so there's blocks 2 and 4 are both feeding into this middle part. Yeah, and 2 and 4 are also feeding in here, but there's only 2 givens here where there's 5 givens here. So it kind of draws your eyes right here, and that's what I would suggest. If you see a grid like this, try solving right here. This is where your maximum density is of digits. And sure enough, you can probably see right away that here, 3, 3, you can solve for 3 right there, and then you can solve for 1, and you can keep on moving. But I'll give you some more hints to that at the end of this video. Other thing I found is I did use some marking in this, but I didn't really need it. When I did do marking, I found out like if I would just look one step further, I could have gotten away with the marks and just done a no mark solve. This also is a really good example of telegraphing. By telegraphing, as you are putting candidates in, you'll see that it kind of builds like a puzzle where you move to the next grid, and then you'll move over to like the next block and next block. And as you build these rows and columns, you'll be able to solve this puzzle. And it's pretty linear. It's going to keep you on the intended solve path, the way to get through this and keep it a gas puzzle. And so I found quite a bit of pointing pairs in this particular puzzle, so that was a repeated pattern. Logical flow, I'd already explained that. So if you're looking for a puzzle with 4 blank grids and it is generally approachable to solve, this is the puzzle for you. So let's move on to our next selection. So our next puzzle is Skyscraper 101 by Chaotix. Now I have featured Chaotix puzzles before, Meeting Point and Can 3 Go in the Corner? And what I like about Chaotix is he puts a clue to how you're going to solve the puzzle in the name of the puzzle. So in this one, hopefully you're going to need a skyscraper, and you expect that to solve this particular puzzle. And I like that idea because it's really a huge hint on what the setter's intended solve path is. And so the reason that Chaotix did this particular puzzle was to show how the skyscraper technique works. Chaotix knows people are on Sudoku.com. They get stuck on the expert puzzles. And when it has a strategy that's beyond the normal 7 strategies to use to solve most puzzles, when you need something like an X-Wing or a skyscraper, people are not really that familiar with the logic. So he made this puzzle to kind of introduce people to the skyscraper technique. took only about 10 to 20 minutes to set this one up. Yeah, he had some help from his friend Sed, who's also a competitor and setter. I haven't met him personally, but they work online and help with this particular puzzle. Also of note is solve has been featured before on Unshackling Sudoku and Puzzles. I'll put a link to that video below. Kishore does a great solve with that, and he even points out the skyscraper logic and explains it in pretty good detail. And what is kind of neat about this puzzle is, yes, you gotta need a skyscraper to get through it, but there's actually 2 skyscrapers, and Kishore points that out in the video. Same point in the puzzle, but you can solve it using a skyscraper, looking at it from 2 different perspectives. Okay, from my solver's perspective, I thought this was a cool puzzle. I felt like there's plenty of activity throughout, and what I mean by that is when you start, you're not just immediately stuck. You can see like right here, 9, 9, and 9. I can do for a 9 right there, for example. And then, you can look at like the 3s. You see you can solve for a 3. And so you're kind of moving through the puzzle right from the beginning. Other thing I noted was there was a lot of like hidden and naked pairs, which kind of made a lot of progress. I was slowed down in my initial solve because I kept looking for the skyscraper. I kept going, okay, is it now I can look for it? Is it now I can look for it? And I would tell you, don't do that. You're not going to get to the skyscraper part until you're about 2/3 of the way to the puzzle. Just solve it normally. Do the normal logic that you look for, and it'll get to a point where you get somewhat stuck, and then you can start looking for that skyscraper. Other things I thought, there's not really a lot of centrality. The grid is kind of marked up, but I will mention one thing. When you see a grid like this, where the numbers, the cells are kind of offset when you go from one column to the next in the rows, see how like the one's up here, but the 2's down there, and the 5's up there, and the 4's there. They're not like straight across. This lends itself to great use of skyscrapers and swordfish, and even set. You can do set equivalence theory. You can probably make a lot of progress in this puzzle. And what I mean by this is, let's look for like, say, 1s. If you're trying to see how many 1s are across row 4, you'll notice there's only 2 spots for a 1, either here or here, because this one comes down there. This one fills all 3 of these spots. You'll notice these 3 digits, the 9, the 4, and the 3, they're kind of like blocking cells where a 1 can't be. So you only have 2 spots for the 1 there. And when you have, again, only 2 spots in the available row column or house, it leads to some of the more advanced technologies. I'm already thinking, hey, an X-Wing, swordfish, or a skyscraper may come in really handy in this particular puzzle. So check out my hints at the end. I'll give you a couple more tips on how to get through this puzzle. Let's move on to our next selection. For my 3rd selection, which I call the hard puzzle, I'm going to recommend Teeny Tiny Square by the TheTeaRex 1.5. I've recommended TheTeaRex puzzles before, along with Florian's. This one is also quite a joy. It's quite a challenge to solve. And the TheTeaRex says he usually has an idea for a puzzle every 2 or 3 days. They're kind of memey, like you'll pick a particular theme and kind of make a play on it or make it kind of ridiculous. In this case, he works off uniqueness. Now, you might be familiar with how unique rectangles work. It's all based on the premise that a puzzle has a unique solution. And so you can use that parameter to make solves in the puzzle. And so most setters don't like putting uniqueness in a puzzle as a way to solve it. It ends up being like a bypass of sorts. So they want and intend for solvers to get through a puzzle without having to rely on that uniqueness part of the description. But in this particular one, the TheTeaRex is like, oh, uniqueness applies. He's like, you can use the fact that the puzzle has a unique solution to help solve it. He intended for you to find that uniqueness. The thing that will clue you in, of course, you see this 1, 2 right here and this 1, 2 right here. These are really natural funnels of where your eyes are going to look because there's a lot of digits right there. And guess what? The 1s and 2s, that's where the uniqueness comes into play. I'll explain a little bit more and give a huge hint and spoiler about how that's intended to go at the end of the puzzle. Some other things that the TheTeaRex said is that he just wanted to make a puzzle uniqueness deduction. He hadn't made a puzzle in a while. He was thinking about a kind of a cool pattern to work with, and the pattern he comes up with is actually somewhat unique. Even Jovial said that she hadn't seen that before. It took him a little bit longer to set, so we're talking more like an hour and a half to 2 hours, where he might do 30 minutes to an hour. No one really helped him set with the ideas. He just had people in the Sudoku Cult server help with the testing part, and he didn't really add anything else. So I will give you a couple more tips and hints at the end here, including one huge spoiler that will help you solve this puzzle. I'll tell you from my perspective solving it, it was not easy. It wasn't a really quick solve for me. I kind of worked my way through, and I did not pick up on the uniqueness factor. I did another type of logic that kind of got me around, but it also got me to the same endpoint, and I did end up solving the puzzle. I think you'll thoroughly enjoy it. I think you'll be up for this challenge. So now let's move on to our hints, tips, and spoilers. Okay, for Florian's gas puzzle, just start here in block 5 and work your way out. So you see how you can put a 3 right there pretty easily. You can see how the 1s play. You can put a 1 right there, and then with the 8 comes down, you can go and solve that. And this is going to lend yourself over here to start working in blocks 4 and 2. So you can see how the 5 comes across. You can do the 5 right there, and then with the 7s coming across, you can put the 7 right there. And what you'll do is you'll start creating these longer rows and columns coming out, and use that to kind of get your solve going. And then you'll see it'll just be 1 or 2 cells you need to focus on at a time. You'll get through it pretty quick. Okay, for Chaotix, Skyscraper 101, again, the big hint, just work through the puzzle. There's only 1 skyscraper, and it's somewhat near the end. You're going to be 2/3, 3/4 of the way through it. And then my big spoiler is that the skyscraper involves the number 6. Okay, you'll be a skyscraper of 6s when you get to that point. Before that, it's just all hidden naked pairs, and triples can kind of get you through to the point where you need to get for this puzzle. If you're still really stuck, go check out Kishore's solve video. It's excellent. Okay, for Teeny Tiny Square, this 1, 2, 1, 2 plays a hint. The big spoiler, if you're ready for this, you don't want to get there's 2 ways to get through this. If you want to do the intended solve logic, look right here and notice and ask yourself this question: can you put a 1 and a 2 in these 2 squares? And if you can't put a 1 or 2 there, what does that mean for the rest of this block and the rest of this puzzle? If you figure that part out using your uniqueness deduction, puzzle will crack. You'll be able to solve pretty quickly. Now, the way I did it, if you don't want to use uniqueness, work yourself through this puzzle. You're going to get to a point where you have a lot of bi-value cells. From that point, you're going to need a couple of XY chains. And the XY chains actually end up using, you're going to use a cell that's up in here in block 3. So the logic I use for the XY chain is similar to the uniqueness in start solving and being able to eliminate a couple candidates. All right, so those are my big hints for those 3 puzzles. Hope you enjoyed this. Check out these other videos to see some more cool solving by these featured setters. I want to thank all the setters for their insights and for letting me feature your puzzles on Smart Hobbies. Please also check out my Buy Me a Coffee page at the link in the description below. Thank you so much for watching.